आप कौन सा स्क्रीन रिकॉर्डर लिए हैं सर? हाँ यार, इसको भी हमको इंस्टॉल करना चाहिए। मेरे पास तो OBS स्टूडियो पड़ा हुआ है। अरे मैं उसमें रिकॉर्ड नहीं देखते हैं, आवाज आती है कि नहीं आती। गुड मॉर्निंग मैम। कौन होस्ट है यार इसमें? कोई होस्ट नहीं दिख रहा अभी तक। These people। इनका हटाओ, नहीं मैं कोई सकती हूँ। रीड करो। बिल्कुल अपने में वो सॉफ्टवेयर डाउनलोड करो जो सर बता रहे हैं रिकॉर्डिंग के लिए। आप कर लो ना। मेरे में OBS चल रहा है, OBS स्टूडियो। वो लगाना पड़ता था, होता है। हाँ, ये सब का आ रहा है। आवाज आई तो ठीक है, नहीं तो लीव करके मोबाइल में ज्वाइन करेंगे क्योंकि इसका दिक्कत करता है माइक एक साथ। अरे स्क्रीन शेयर हो गई भैया। तुम्हारा हेडफोन लेकर दोनों काम करा तो ले आओ, लगाओ कि इसमें बैठो कि हेडफोन काम कर रहा तो एक हमको लगाओ, एक वहाँ अपने में लगाओ कि सुनो आगे क्या कह रही है। हरो काम करता है यार, एक ही काम करता है। लाओ अच्छा देखते हैं कुछ समझ में आता है कि नहीं करते। क्लास लग गया आज बहुत दिन बाद। आवाज आवाज तो कुछ आ ही नहीं रही यार अभी तो। कब बोलना स्टार्ट करोगे भाई? नेटवर्क वेरिएबल एंड लाइब्रेरी डेवलपमेंट, इसको यूट्यूब पर भी शेयर कर दो, इनसे बोल दो। यार कुछ आवाज आवाज नहीं आ रही, आवाज आ रही है आपने? मेरे नहीं आ रही यार, कहाँ से दिक्कत कर रहा तो ब्लूटूथ है इसमें, बारिश का ब्लूटूथ चल रहा है मगर काम नहीं कर रहा है। हाँ, तो आप इसका तो स्पीच रिकॉर्ड होगा ना? हाँ, वो इसमें वॉइस पड़ जाएगी। हेलो कर लेता हूँ, करिए।
So you can have the data in one way or both the ways, that is read as well as write.
हेलो।
So the variables must be defined in the strict and identical list on both the PLCs, which are sender and receiver. So we will see in the further slides how to create sender and how to define the variables in sender and how that can be accessed in the receiver PLC. So network variables is one method for PLC to PLC data exchange which works on UDP protocol. Other than network variables, we also know that we can exchange data which we have done from before, that is over Modbus protocol, that's Modbus TCP IP. So here in Modbus TCP IP, what are some of the important things to know while doing the data exchange? One thing is it requires a manual handling of read and write operations using the function blocks. So if you're using an AC500 V3, we have this Modbus TCP IP library where there are predefined mod TCP mask function blocks for read and write. So in one PLC, which is the sender or the receiver, there you need to create the function blocks, and in another PLC you need to give the memory mapping addressing. So this has to be taken care in the Modbus. And also we know that Modbus protocol has a data block limitation of up to 120 words, that is around 240 bytes. So if you require more data to be transmitted, you have to create multiple queries inside the program. And coming to the configuration, you need to configure this Modbus protocol in the hardware tree or the project tree. Next is UDP protocol. So network variables is based on this UDP protocol. Here, user need to only take care of the sender and the receiver variable logic. And memory mapping has to be done on the both the PLCs. So here maximum data that can be transmitted or transferred per packet is 1464 bytes. So if you have larger data beyond this, you need to split them and manage the data. Another protocol that can be used for PLC to PLC data exchange is TCP. So this is also a similar to UDP. Here you can see that UDP and TCP are connectionless protocols. So even in TCP, you have its own function blocks which can be used for sending or receiving the data. And here also memory allocation is required. What is the advantage of over TCP IP protocol is here frame size can go approximately up to 65 KB. You no need to split the larger data into multiple frames. You can send them directly. So here we have few more other protocols. So this is the table which demonstrates the PLC to PLC data exchange protocols. So one is network variables, which we have already seen. Here you'll have two PLCs where it can be sender and then receiver. So what are all the other factors when you see this protocol? This is one of the high speed protocol for data exchange. Engineering efforts are very minimum. Here main disadvantage is that, or not disadvantage, limitation is that we cannot get proper diagnostics. So once you send the data, you cannot identify whether the receiver has received it or not. So that is one of the limitations here. But coming to speed, it's very high speed for data exchange. Another one is the over Profinet IO. So here one PLC will act as the controller, which is the master, and another PLC will act as the device. Here speed is also high. We need additional hardware here for Profinet. In AC500, we need additional hardware, that is CM579 PNIO for controller module and CM589 PNIO for device module. Here also the engineering efforts are low. Just you need require this GSDML file, and based on that you do the IO mapping. Here definitely you will have the diagnostics. Another one is IC61850 Goose protocol, where you call it as publisher and subscriber. The speed is also high. Here you require additional license, which is cost. And then engineering efforts is medium and diagnostics is possible. Another protocol is over Ethernet IP, where you call it as scanner and adapter. Scanner is like the master and adapter is the slave. The speed is also high, and here also additional licenses required. Low engineering efforts with the EID files, and then diagnostics is available. Another one which we just discussed, that is Modbus TCP, where you call as client and server. Here the speed is medium and engineering efforts are also medium and diagnostics is possible. So this is a small comparison table which you can use for PLC to PLC data exchange. So we have seen mostly people using only Modbus protocol. In V3, this network variables is also possible, which you can use it. So what are some of the prerequisites that you need to remember while using network variables are: the automation builder version should be 2.5 or above. So presently all of you know we are using automation builder 2.9, and you need to create an application in the project tree and add sender and receiver. Another prerequisite mostly recommended is all the PLCs must be in the same class C network. So whichever PLCs you're doing the data exchange, that should be mostly in the class C network, that is with the network mask or the subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. So now let's move on to the practical demo. So before that, these are all the slides to show how to create a sender and receiver. So I'll quickly move on to the demonstration part, and then we'll discuss some of the limitations. So let me share my screen. I hope my screen is visible. Automation Builder. If yes, please give a thumbs up. Okay, now let's create a new project. So network variables, demo webinar. So right now I am having two PM5675 PLCs. So let's do the data exchange between those two PLCs. PM5675. So another important thing I want to mention here is that By default, we recommend to use ETH2 for NVL, that's network variables, because UDP protocol is by default present on ETH port 2. In case you have a requirement to use ETH1 in your projects, then you need to create a standard gateway for that. You need to add the gateway. So right now I am using ETH2 for my communication. So let me show what are all the two PLCs available. Sorry. Yeah, so you can see there are two PM5675 and ETH2 is used. So we have two PLCs 192.168.1.10 and 1.11, and you can see the subnet of that PLC is 255.255.255.0. In case you want to use ETH1 for network variables, you need to set the standard gateway. Please do remember this point. Okay, so let me rename this PLC now as PLC A or PLC 1. Now let's see how to create the sender list. So very simple, go to application, right click, add object, network variable list sender. So you can see the symbol similar to like a GVL. You will have NVL, network variable list sender. For sender, you will add sender. For receiver, you will add receiver. So once you add, you'll get a pop-up. You can give a name, NVL sender 1, and network type. As we discussed, this works on UDP protocol. And then you need to select the task which is already available. And then what is this list identifier? So this comes into play, or this when this is required is, for example, you have for the same PLC multiple senders and receivers, then this list identifier will be used. So if you're having only one sender, you leave it as default one. In case you want to create another sender for the same PLCs or in another PLC involved in the same network, list identifier has to be unique and different, then only it will work. Then go to settings. Here you need to enter the receiver IP. So by default it will be the broadcast IP address, that is 255.255.255.255. So it's like any PLCs in that whole network can be accessed. So we need to limit this in order to reduce the network load or CPU load. So you can, if you have only one receiver, then you can put 192.168.1 dot that another PLC IP address. Or if you are having multiple PLCs with same IP series in this network, what you can do is 192.168.1 dot 255 you can add. So you can use one sender, multiple receivers of the same IP series. Okay. So now let me add directly. This is the second PLC IP address. And here cyclic transmission. So actually you can do transmission with 1 millisecond also, as this is the one of the faster communication. But let's not use lesser millisecond, at least use 10 to 20 milliseconds. This loads your network unnecessarily if you add lesser interval. So I will keep it as 50 milliseconds only. So once you add, you can see the sender is created. Now you can add the variables here, which all you need to transfer to the another PLC. So let me just add one few variables, a boolean tag, then another word tag. I'll just create an array for a real. So you can also transfer array data type also. Okay, so here whatever all the variables you require, you can add it under the sender and then you are done. So if you want any program here, you can do it. So you can write some expressions using those variables. Okay, so I'll just write it like this. Add 1.1 to that because it's a real. Let's use a real variable. Okay, then just rebuild and check, compile it if there are any errors. Okay, there are no errors. So now we are done with the sender PLC. Now let's add another PLC for receiver. So here both the PLC need not be of the same type. It can be of different types. Like you can communicate between AC 500 V3 and AC 500 V3 Eco also, or between both Eco PLCs or both standard PLCs. This is allowed only in V3 PLC, not over V2. For V2, you can use Modbus protocol. So let me add another PLC, which is a receiver. Let me rename this as B. Okay. Now how to create a receiver in this PLC? Same procedure, go to application, right click, add object, network variable list, receiver you need to add. So once you add receiver, if you're creating both the PLCs in the same project under the same device tree, so you'll get the sender details immediately. In case you're creating in two different projects, then you can export and import the file. So maybe in next case, I will show you that export and import. So automatically all the senders in that project will be available. You can just select it and click add. So you can see this global variable list is received via the network. Sender is NVL S1, protocol is UDP. All the variables that was part of sender is available in the receiver also. Very simple. So let me rename this receiver 1. Okay, so we are done now. Let's download to both the PLCs and then check if the data is getting exchanged or not. So if you have any questions, please type it in the chat. After the demo, I will enable your mics. Okay, now let's log in. So first PLC, I'll keep it as 1.10. Login. Okay. So now let me log into the second PLC also. That's 1.11. So yes, we have logged in both the PLCs. So this is the sender one. You can see some calculations are happening on the variable based on our expression. Let me move this side by side. So you can see in the receiver PLC also the same data is coming. Now I can even do online some data entry, like in the word I will write some value. So you can see immediately updated in receiver. So this is how you can exchange data, both read as well as write in the network variables. So this is, we are having one sender, one receiver. So now I'll also show the receiver PLC also. I'll add a sender to it and do the data exchange. Now let me add a sender in the PLC B. Same procedure. So here you need to remember the list identifier needs to be changed. Otherwise it will not work. So I will give name sender to and settings one dot 10. So again, I repeat, if you have multiple receivers from the same sender, please use the first three numbers, 192.168.1 dot, keep it as 255. So multiple receivers in this series can be receive the data. Let's create some variables. So as I told you, in this over UDP protocol, diagnosis is not available, but you can create a watchdog variable, and through that watchdog variable, you can monitor whenever any, I mean, cable is disconnected or communication break is there. Through that, you can ensure that the data exchange is happening or not. So for that, let me create one variable here as boolean watchdog to PLC A. Okay. So similarly in the other PLC also I will create in the sender. Now let me write some program here. Data in dot equal to okay, and there is a small logic that is for the watchdog monitoring. So I will just copy and paste this. So this is available in the sample project also. You can take it from there also.
मेरा क्लीन नहीं दिख रहा है, क्या लिख रहा था क्या?
So I
हाँ
need to create a variable in the other PLC and then I will add it here.
हाँ, क्लियर नहीं आ
So
रहा।
change it with your watchdog variable.
अच्छा, एक रील्स लगा दिया।
Sorry, this you can write it in this PLC or the other PLC also. We'll write it in the other PLC.
हाँ, रिकॉर्ड कर दी सारे का। हाँ
Okay, so I have completed creating the sender in this PLC. Now let's go to the PLC 1 and add a receiver. So here also you can see automatically it will take it if it is in the same project. So you can see all the three variables are available in the receiver. Okay. So in the center here, let me add one watchdog variable. Okay. So this is the sender one. So once you just change and then compile it automatically, that will get updated in your receiver PLC if it's in the same project tree. So you can see here in the receiver. The new variable has been updated. Okay. So let's write that program for watchdog. Boolean watchdog to be dot equal to what you received it. So Boolean watchdog to A. Okay. So I'm just replacing the watchdog variables that was available in the sample project. Okay. Just compile it. Okay. There are no errors. So in PLC B also, I'll just write an expression to check the watchdog variable equal or not. Boolean watchdog to A dot equal to Boolean watchdog. This is from the receiver.
बहुत आंखें गड़ा के देखना
Okay.
पड़ता है।
So like this, you can add multiple senders and multiple receivers. So now let's download and log in.
मैडम आपका हमने आपका तात्पर्य समझ लिया है। हाँ वो तो हम ऐसे ही कर सकते हैं कि आप मैडम बढ़िया लैपटॉप लेके नहीं बैठी हैं।
Okay. Now let's log into A as well.
कहाँ पे कहा कर रहे हैं ये जूम करें थोड़ा सा वैल्यू तो आने लगी मैडम तुम्हारी।
Okay. So I will just close all the windows and open only sender 2 and receiver 2.
अपना ये रिकॉर्डिंग ओरिजिनल रिकॉर्डिंग हम लोगों को देंगे मिल जाता है तो सर ले लीजिएगा आप।
So you can see the data is getting updated. And here this watchdog, since we have taken or not, you can see the difference. So continuously there should be changing. Now I'll do a wire break between the PLCs. So you can see it gets freezed and it is not changing. So you can monitor this watchdog bit. It is freezed, it is not changing. So that indicates that, okay, maybe there is communication break or cable disconnection. So let me reconnect it back.
नेटवर्क वेरिएबल यार 1 घंटा क्लास हो गया।
So you can see the data update continues. So you need to log in the other PLC which you disconnected, because I had used the same port for login and network shared variables. So in this way, you can do the use the network variables for data exchange. So let me log in again.
मुझे मैडम आवा नहीं पहला वाला तो थोड़ा समझ में आवा कहाँ पे पेस्ट लगा दिए सर।
Okay. So that is all about the network variables. I will enable the mics. Yes, your mics are enabled. If you have any doubts, please unmute and ask. I think most of the questions are being already answered by Vasant. Thank you.
तुम्हारा
Okay, so last discussion about this topic is about the limitations.
मैंने कमेंट किया था पढ़े नहीं उन्होंने। क्या बताइए
All these steps we saw in the demo now.
ये बड़ा नाली में यार क्या बता रहे थे मेरा नेटवर्क विजिबल नहीं। अरे यार सर जी तुम्हारा भी खराब है। अरे पीपीएल वाले गड़बड़ है सब कुछ। अरे पीपीएल वालों का नेटवर्क जो है वो गड़बड़ है इस वजह से स्क्रीन सही नहीं चल रही है।
Okay, some question now. Can you describe the list identifier once again? Okay, anywhere it's available in the hints, I will show it to you again. I hope my screen is visible. Can you all confirm?
यस, आपकी बार तो सही दिख रहा है, बीबीपी में अच्छा दिख रहा
Is my
है।
screen visible? Okay, thank you. Yeah, let's discuss some of the limitations about network variables. So I think most of it I had informed during our demonstration itself. Let's just go through it again. The first one is, as we all discussed, by default, the ETH port for network variables is always ETH2, which we already saw in the demo. In case you have a requirement of using ETH1 for the data exchange over network variables, then it is mandatory to set a gateway in the IP settings. So as I showed you, you need to set the standard gateway here based on your gateway IP address. Second, here the amount of variables to exchange, if maybe someone would have asked, it is unlimited. Number of variables is unlimited, but the variable size should not be more than 255 bytes. Okay, so if the amount of data exceeds the data of one network telegram, that is 255 bytes, you need to split that data into multiple telegrams of 255 bytes. Okay, then again, as we discussed, this is over UDP protocol, that's connectionless protocol, where sender will not get any confirmation or it will not validate if the receiver has received all the data or not. For example, you have sent 10 data. You will not get any diagnosis or response that, okay, all the 10 data has reached the receiver. So you can use this watchdog variable and you can monitor the communication. So this is for one way you can monitor whether the communication is happening or not, and you can also refer whether the link is up or not. Just now we saw with that watchdog variable.
वेरी वेल।
Another one is when you have different receivers. I told you you have one PLC but five receivers, one sender and five receivers. That time, or if you have two senders and one receiver, like if you take one use case is when you're using a redundant system where you have two PLCs and you have another is a gateway PLC where it is communicating over other protocols with other devices. That time you will have two senders, that's HA, PLC, PLC A and PLC B, and the gateway PLC, which is the receiver. Two senders and one receiver. So that time this list identifier is important. In one sender, you need to have a list identifier as one. In another sender, you need to have a list identifier as two or three, something like that. So if you have more than one receiver or senders of different PLCs, take care of the list identifier. Okay, so someone had asked in the chat, if you're having more senders and more receivers, please use unique list identifiers. Next, network variables is on UDP, and by default the broadcast IP is used. So when you saw, when we clicked on the settings, the broadcast IP address was 255.255.255. So this uses the broadcast IP by default, and message is received by all the devices which is on that network. So if there are any bigger or complex network, large network, this can increase the network load. Using a broadcast IP can increase the network load. So not all routers or networks can handle this broadcast IP efficiently. What is the recommendation? You limit your network to physical segmentation. You can group them or you can configure that router so that it can handle that broadcast IP. Another simple possibility is you can limit this broadcast IP. So if you're having only one receiver, then just add that receiver IP address. If you're having multiple receivers in the same network, then you can use as 192.168.2.255, so that all the devices in that 192.168.2. Series will be accessible to that sender. Okay, so that's what is given, how you can set only the receiver IP. So this can reduce your network load. Next thing is it is about the timings. So here we all saw the cyclic transmission. So theoretically, if you ask what is the minimum interval I can set here, so you can set 1 milliseconds, but in reality the we suggest you to have minimum 10 milliseconds or more, so that you can have a hold of your PLC load and PLC performance. Okay, so now by default when you create, it will take an interval of 50 millisecond. You can reduce up to 10 to 20 milliseconds, no problem. So based on your PLCs or CPU performance, you can do this interval time settings.
नेटवर्क स्पीड बढ़ाओ.
So this data exchange via network variables is not possible if the device target system does not support it, which means if your PLC is V2 and one PLC is V2, one PLC is V3, then you cannot use network variables. You should use only Modbus or other which we discussed. If both the PLCs are V3, then you can go for network variables. Then if any firewall is available in the network and if it blocks the communication or it blocks that IP, then network variables is not supported.
अभी
Then if another client or application is using the UDP port, so we told that by default ETH2 is for the UDP. So other than network variables, if that port is used for UDP communication for some other purpose, then you cannot use network variables on the same port. If more than one application per sender device and a receiver device use network variable list. Okay, so if you have like in the same application, it has used network variable list,
निकल करने के लिए तो अच्छा है.
so only once you can, in that whole application, you can create multiple senders and receivers, but you need to take care of this list identifier. So these are some of the details how to use network variables and what are some of the limitations you need to consider while using network variables. So we just completed the demo. Before we move on to the next topic, that's library development, if any questions? Any questions? Okay, so now library development will be taken over by Mr. Vasant. So before we move on, let's take a small group photo. I will enable your cameras. So please turn on them. Just a minute. Yes, I have enabled your cameras. Please turn on them. Quickly, please turn on your camera. Let's take a photo.
गजब इंसान है यार. मैडम यार कहाँ की हैं यार, बहुत तगड़ा पढ़ाते हैं. अच्छा कैमरा
Yeah.
नहीं है.
We're able to see only three screens, I
No,
think.
many people have turned on. You need to change
Can
the
you share
view.
the
View.
screen, Vidya?
Oh no, you can change the view. View. Yeah.
नहीं आएंगे, उंगली लगा दोगे तुम.
Okay.
इतने लोग तो आ चुके हैं.
New large library. Large gallery.
ओह ये देखो सब आ गई फैमिली. नहीं हो बन जाएंगे, उंगली लगा दो.
So yeah, good to see many people have turned on your cameras. So quickly, let's take a photo.
क्या दिक्कत है तो ऐसे
Everyone say smile.
स्माइल कर लो. हम लोग ज्यादा हाथ लेते हैं.
Lovely, lovely to see many people. Yes.
That's
Any
all.
doubts in the network variables before we move on to the next topic? Okay. Thank you. If no doubts, then we'll move on over to Vasant.
Yeah, thank you, Vidya. Thank you so much. I think you have briefed well on the network shared variable concept, where we can use this concept for exchanging the data between AC funded V3 product to V3 product. So whatever the concept now briefed is for AC funded V3, it's not for AC funded V2 PLC, where we used to have Modbus TCP IP communication. Okay, so now it is very simple. So you to exchange the data. So now I'll move on to the next topic. It's very important, and the library development. Okay, so just a brief, there is nothing on the library development. It's library means it's very simple. You will have multiple functions, function block all together. You make it as one library, so that you can also use it in any of the project. So it's like you are developing any function block within your project that will be specific to your project. And if you make a library that can be specific to your all automation projects of multiple customer applications. Okay. So it is very good to have library for your own application, or it can be like utility libraries for your companies, like where you will be working on multiple applications. Okay, so you can make use of this library for all your like engineers who go to site, so that it will be managed centrally. Okay, so if anything require changes where your engineer made some changes at site, so that can be updated centrally, so that it will be available in other site also. So same whatever changes you made it will be applicable to all other sites. So it is very important to manage your function block centrally using library development. Okay, so there is no much presentation on the library development. There are few topics. I'll just brief where there some library if you are making specifically for an OEM or a customer, where you can have more control on the function block. Okay, using library, like where you can make a library input output, you can make it like a black box where it will not visible to the customer itself. It's like it's visibling like a small box, so what is going inside nobody can understand. Where you are linking variables, nobody can identify. Such can be developed using libraries. So there are some pragmas where we can use it in your library development, so that it will not be visible to the customer. So if your code is so secret, so in that cases, so when you create an automation builder application, so this window will open. Okay, I'll keep starting the application while explaining this presentation. So once you create a new project, you will get a two categories. So mostly project is a default, so that's why you will see an AC 500. Okay, so that is specifically for an hardware where you can select a AC 500 project. And if you see on the top side, there will be a library. So if you select that library, you will get a template. It is always recommended if you are creating a library, you always select a library. All other libraries like container, empty, or interface library, like container libraries only contains library manager as well as document. So which also used to include set of other library into your libraries. Okay, and then if you are selecting empty library, if you don't want any folders or anything on your application, means library application, then use empty library. Okay, so interface library is basically for where the elements do not generate a code like constraints, structures, or interface. In that cases, you can select interface. But most of the cases, you select. Our recommendation is to select a library, so which will come with a predefined settings, structures, and objects within when you create an new library. So let's start with an automation builder. Currently, I'm using an automation builder 2.9. So first of all, to create a library, you don't need any automation builder license. You can use a automation builder basic license, okay, to create an application. Means with using automation builder, if you want to create a library, you don't need a license. That is, I mean, okay. So I'm just making, even if you have created already function block in a project, you can simply copy paste those function block into your application. Okay, so if you already made a lot of applications where you have multiple function blocks on different applications, so you copy all and just simply paste it in library so that it will come in one application library.
PLC ROM.
See, so there is a,
ये लो
once you open automation builder, you can select a new project.
डबल डबल है सर.
So you can see there is a pop-up. It will show for library as well as projects. By default, project is selected. So if you want to use an AC funded project, then you have to select projects. Otherwise, if you want to create a library, select library, then you will get a templates. So as of now, I'll use a library, and you can select the location where you want to store it. So let's okay, create a folder in desktop and keep it. Okay.
हाँ यार अच्छे ले लो यार.
Okay. So just giving a demo as an application name. So you can give it any name. So this name will not be visible in your library when you add it. So there is a namespace that I will brief where you have to give the name to that. Okay, so just select an project name. It's called demo. So it is very important to keep this project with you in order to make any modification with your library. Okay, or you want to change the revision with some update and some of the function block. Okay, so if you do not have the source code, okay, definitely you cannot do any changes in your library. So it's like no use. Okay, so it is very important to have library source file. Okay, so if you see this library, so this is giving a project name as demo, and lot of folders are by default created. So whichever folder you need, you just need to enable those, means keep those folder. Otherwise, you simply delete those folders. So once you get that object, first delete from the structure like folder which are not required, the objects which are not needed in your project, library which are not needed. So where you add a standard library, which if it is not required, you don't need to add it in this. Okay, you simply remove it.
चाय
So
मिलती है.
also when you add libraries, like you need a timer, all these things. So to use it within your function block, then you have to add a standard library to that. So otherwise you will not get any uh, uh, like timers. Okay, so counters, all these things which comes under standard. So default when you add it, so simply add a standard library to that. So because most of your applications comes with the timer and counters. So let's see, go to library manager. So there is no libraries which are added. So I can simply add standard. So
ले लो.
so if you see this library, so you will get all the libraries. Okay, like for timer, counters, triggers, and some string functions. So this may be required for your applications. You simply add this. Okay. Or if you need some more libraries like utility, so you can also add utility library. Okay. So in that case, you simply add util. So in the util, like blink blocks and other like whatever showing here, no, conversion, data types, okay, signals, okay, so all these libraries are available in the utilities. So my recommendation, whenever you're adding library, creating library, these two, if you add it, most of your simple function blocks or functions, you will get it as for your applications. So now whatever, like if you need folders, you keep it, otherwise simply delete it, otherwise you keep it as it is. The next, before you start your library development, first you make sure you do check your project information. Okay, so in the project information, I'll just show you. Okay, so you have to enter the company name. So if it is required, you have to enter. Okay, and where if you want to use it in the repository, when you are adding, this company name will come. Okay, and title for the library, it must be unique. Okay, so the title you have to keep a unique name, and you should always mention the version. Okay, should be specified. And if any version you are modifying, any program inside this library you are modifying, so that you can always create a version with a released one. So if you tick release, then this version library is released. So then you will have a library categories. If you want to mix up with another library, so then you can add it. Or you have a library where you want to categorize into another library, then you have to select that XML file here, and you can keep a default space name. Okay, so this will be appear in the library, and you can give an author who is like making this library, and also the description file means for that library you can enter. And the next very important thing is library compatibility. Let's say if you're developing a library in 2.9 at your site, if it is 2.4 or 2.5, definitely you cannot use it. So always you select a lower compatibility. If you have the automation builder is already installed, then it will show it here. If it is not installed, you will show only 2.9. Okay, so it is very important on what library compatibility you are going to develop your library. So that is very important. Okay, so since I have no version, so there is no option I'm able to get it here. Okay, so if you want to enforce it, you can enforce it. Otherwise, you can use it for any other versions. Okay, so I'll use library with a version. Okay, let's say I use 1.1.0. Okay, or 00. You can give it anything. Okay, so I will give AC500 as a default, and you can give the demo as a name. So company I will give here ABB. Okay, so and there are other properties which are available. So where you can add those properties into this, and if you are not required, let's say you want to start whatever function block you add it inside this library, and when you are using in program, if you want to start with, let's say, your company name dot that function block. So those things you have to select it here. Okay, now I've given a default space name, default namespace as an AC500, so that I should always use AC500 in my entire means project when I add this library. So these options are available. You can set it. Okay, and apart from that, if you like how many folders are there, how many DUTs, all this variable list. So if you create a global variable list within this library, then it will show how many tags are created. So all these are available as a summary. And then if you want to license this library, where you want to sell this library as a licensing, okay, with a cost, then you can activate this library with a firm code, product code, and activation URL. Okay, so you can also sell the library to any other customers. So they just need to plug this dongle so that it will activate the library. So these are the various options available when you create an project information with the library. Okay, so now we have done all. Okay, let's say I make some function blocks. Okay, so which is already ready made. It is available. I simply copy paste. Uh, so I'll take some SRAM. Okay, so this is code. Okay, I simply copy paste here, or I can simply export this code. Since it is in structure text, I can simply use a copy paste. Okay, so that is the advantage of using structure text. Okay, so there is no build option in this. So